All right, ready to dive into something pretty amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Always up for a good deep dive.
This time, we're heading over to Turkey. Göbekli Tepe. Ever heard of it?
I have, and it's honestly one of those places that just makes you rethink what we know about, well, pretty much everything.
Right. I mean, we're talking structures that predate Stonehenge by thousands of years, massive stones, intricate carvings. It's mind-boggling.
The level of sophistication, especially when you consider the tools they would have had at their disposal, it's incredible.
It really is. And that's why we're focusing on Pillar 43 today.
Ah, yes, the one that sparked all this debate about a potential star map.
Exactly. And not just any star map, but one that supposedly depicts the night sky from, wait for it, around 14,600 BCE.
Now, that's a date that gets people talking, particularly in the archaeology world.
I can imagine. Because mainstream archaeology tends to place Göbekli Tepe's construction much later, closer to 10,000 BCE, right?
That's right. So the star map interpretation is definitely shaking things up.
Well, let's break it down then. What's the argument for Pillar 43 actually being this ancient star map?
The main proponents, especially a researcher known as the Ethical Skeptic, they're pointing to 9 specific symbols on the pillar.
They're saying these aren't just random animal carvings, but actual representations of constellations.
Yeah, they believe they line up with Cygnus, Scorpio, and maybe even figures like a snake, a dog, a frog.
Wow. And their claim is that the arrangement is too precise to just be a coincidence.
Exactly. They've actually calculated the statistical probability of these alignments happening by chance, and it's, well, incredibly low.
So that's pretty compelling. Now, what about those carvings above what they're calling the celestial North Pole on the pillar, those fireboxes?
Right, those. They think those might depict the aurora borealis.
Hold on, the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
But wouldn't those be pretty hard to see from Göbekli Tepe's location?
You'd think so. For them to be visible that far south, you'd need something to significantly disrupt Earth's magnetic field.
Okay, and the ethical skeptic's theory for that is?
An impact event. An asteroid or comet hitting Earth.
Wow, that's a bold claim.
Yeah.
And they're connecting this to that period of rapidly rising sea levels, Meltwater Pulse 1A, around 14,600 BCE.
Exactly. Their idea is that this impact caused a sudden, massive ice melt, leading to that rapid sea level rise. And they believe Pillar 43 was meant as a warning to future generations about this cataclysmic event.
A warning from the past. That's incredible. But there are also those handbag symbols on the pillar. What do those represent?
Well, according to the Ethical Skeptic, they could symbolize 3 tipe, which is Turkish for hills.
Pills. What's the significance there?
They believe those hills were deliberately hollowed out to create shelters from the cataclysm, essentially bunkers.
So Göbekli Tepe itself on a hilltop might have been part of this larger network of underground shelters.
That's the suggestion, yes.
This is getting more and more fascinating by the minute. Now, the ethical skeptic has even linked another site, Karahan Tepe, to this.
Right, Karahan Tepe has similar features to Göbekli Tepe, and they think it could be the second Tepe depicted on Pillar 43.
Wait, are you saying there might be a third site out there, a missing piece of this puzzle?
That's the implication, though of course it's all hypothetical at this point. We're really in the realm of speculation here.
I mean, it's all incredibly intriguing. But before we get too carried away, we should probably hear what mainstream archaeology has to say about all this.
Oh, definitely. There's a good deal of skepticism out there, as you might expect.
Starting with that 14,600 BCE date.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, mainstream archaeology, based on radiocarbon dating and analysis of the site, places Göbekli Tepe's construction closer to 10,000 BCE.
So that's a pretty significant difference. It throws a wrench in the ethical skeptic's timeline.
It does. It kind of undermines the whole foundation of their argument.
But what about the symbols themselves on Pillar 43? Do mainstream archaeologists agree that they represent a star map?
Not generally, no.
So if not a star map, what are the other interpretations?
Most lean towards a symbolic or ritualistic meaning rather than precise astronomical representations.
So instead of specific stars and constellations, these carvings could be depicting deities or animals with some spiritual significance.
Exactly. Or they could even just be elaborate decorations. We just don't know for sure.
It's amazing how the same piece of evidence can be interpreted in such completely different
It
ways.
really is. And it shows how our own perspectives, our biases, can influence how we understand the past, even in a field like archaeology.
This whole debate surrounding Göbekli Tepe is a perfect example of that, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a microcosm of a bigger discussion happening all over, not just in archaeology. It's about finding the balance between traditional methods and those more radical interpretations.
On one hand, you have the cautious, data-driven approach, sticking to established methods and rigorous analysis.
And on the other, you have those who are willing to push boundaries, explore unconventional theories, even challenge the status quo.
And both are important, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. The cautious approach makes sure our understanding is built on solid ground, while the more adventurous interpretations can sometimes lead to groundbreaking discoveries.
It's that tension, that back and forth, that really drives progress, pushes us forward.
Exactly. It makes us question our assumptions, refine our methods, and ultimately get to a deeper, more complete understanding of what we're studying.
In this case, the mysteries of Göbekli Tepe and what it tells us about our distant past.
A past that's turning out to be far more complex and fascinating than we ever imagined. It really is.
So let's dive a little deeper into those alternative interpretations of Pillar 43, the ones coming from mainstream archaeology.
All right, so one of the more common ideas is that those animal figures might represent deities or spirits, something important to the belief system of the people who built Göbekli Tepe.
Instead of a literal map of the stars, it could be like a symbolic representation of their cosmology, their mythology.
Exactly. The animals could symbolize forces of nature, ancestors, even abstract concepts that were part of their rituals and worldview.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about how many ancient cultures had such a strong focus on animal symbolism.
Exactly. And this idea fits with the theory that Göbekli Tepe was primarily a ceremonial site, a place for rituals and maybe even some astronomical observation, but not in that precise way the ethical skeptic suggests.
Okay, I followed that. Now, what about those handbag symbols we talked about? Any mainstream interpretations for those that differ from the ethical skeptic's whole shelter theory?
There are a few, although again, we have to remember that without more concrete evidence, a lot of this is still guesswork.
Fair enough. So what are some of the other ideas out there?
Well, some researchers believe those symbols could be clan or family emblems. Maybe they indicated the groups who helped build the site or used it.
Like identifying markers, showing the different groups within the community.
Exactly. And this ties into the idea that Göbekli Tepe wasn't just a standalone temple. It might have been a central meeting place for different communities in that region, a place to connect, trade, maybe even forge alliances.
So Göbekli Tepe wasn't isolated. It was connected to a whole network of social and cultural interactions.
Yeah, that's right. And it just emphasizes how much we still don't know about these people, their society, how they live their lives.
It's pretty humbling, right? All these mysteries we're still trying to figure out.
Definitely. And it's what makes archaeology so exciting.
Okay, so how do archaeologists actually go about trying to piece together this puzzle? What are the tools and methods they use to investigate a site like Göbekli Tepe?
Well, one of the key tools, especially for figuring out the age of things, is radiocarbon dating.
Ah, yes, we mentioned that earlier. Can you break it down for anyone who might not be familiar with how that works?
Sure thing. So basically, all living things, they absorb this radioactive form of carbon from the atmosphere, carbon-14.
So it becomes part of their bodies while they're alive.
Right. And when that organism dies, it stops absorbing carbon-14, and the carbon-14 that's already there, it starts to decay. But the key is it decays at a very specific known rate.
So if you measure how much carbon-14 is left in a sample, you can figure out how long ago that thing died.
Exactly. And that's how we've managed to build a timeline for so many archaeological sites, including Göbekli Tepe.
Pretty amazing stuff.
Mm.
So radiocarbon dating gives us a solid scientific way to estimate the age of things. But how do they figure out the meaning, the purpose behind the structures and the artifacts? How do you approach that when you can't just, ask the people who made them?
That's where it gets tricky, and as we've been discussing, interpretation becomes a big part of the process.
Right, like detective work almost. Piecing together these clues from the past to try to tell a story.
Very much so. It takes a lot of creativity, critical thinking, and collaboration across different fields of study.
So it's not just about digging stuff up, it's about understanding the people who created it, their culture, their beliefs.
Absolutely. And that's often where the tension comes in between the more traditional interpretations and the more radical ones.
Because different researchers might look at the same evidence, but see different things, interpret it through their own lens.
Right. And that can lead to debate, disagreement, which actually helps us learn and refine our understanding.
So the disagreements, they're actually valuable. They make us look at things more closely, consider different perspectives.
Definitely. It's through that kind of debate that knowledge grows and changes.
Now, getting back to Göbekli Tepe specifically, what are some of the big questions that still puzzle researchers? What mysteries are we still trying to solve?
Well, the purpose of Göbekli Tepe is still a big one.
Yeah, we've talked about it being a ceremonial site, maybe a social hub, but is that the whole story? Could there be other things going on there that we haven't even thought of?
Exactly. And then there's the question of who actually built it. I mean, we say early humans, but was it really a collective effort, or was there some central authority organizing everything?
Right, right. And how did they manage to move and erect those massive stone pillars? The technology they would have had back then. It's mind-blowing.
It really is a true engineering feat. And then there's the whole mystery of why they buried the site.
Around 8000 BCE, what was the purpose of that? Was it symbolic? A way to protect it? Something else entirely?
So many questions. And honestly, with every new discovery, it seems like even more questions pop up.
It really makes you realize how much we don't know, how much is still out there waiting to be discovered.
That's what makes archaeology so fascinating, right? It's this constant process of discovery, reevaluation, always learning something new.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Göbekli Tepe, what are some key takeaways for our listeners? What have we learned from this incredible place?
Well, for me, I think it just highlights how capable our ancient ancestors were.
Yeah, way more sophisticated than we often give them credit for.
Exactly. Göbekli Tepe challenges that traditional idea of human progress. It shows us that complex societies and monumental structures existed way earlier than we thought possible.
It's almost like a reminder that maybe we're not at the pinnacle of human achievement, but just part of this long chain of civilizations.
I like that. And it also underscores the importance of keeping an open mind about the past.
We can't assume we know everything, and we have to be ready to adjust our thinking when new evidence comes to light.
Göbekli Tepe is a perfect example of how one discovery can completely change our understanding of history.
And who knows what else is out there, waiting to be discovered.
The possibilities are endless, aren't they?
Absolutely. And it's that sense of wonder, that drive to explore that keeps us all searching for answers about who we are and where we came from.
It's a journey without an end, but that's what makes it so exciting.
So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and stay curious, because the past is full of surprises.
And who knows, maybe one of you will make the next big discovery that rewrites the history books.
Until then, keep diving deep.
Always.
Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive into Göbekli Tepe. We'll see you next time.